Chapter 4. Off into the Unknown. They were awakened at 4 a.m. They were both groaning, and then Ted said, "Today is the day of our first flight into outer space." At that, they were both up, showering, getting dressed, and finishing packing their bags. Greg asks, "What do you think we'll see first when we take off?" "I hope not the water in the toilet." Greg didn't say anything else. There was a light knock on the door. Greg opened it. It was Ted's friend. He asked, "How can I help?" Ted asks, "What do we do with the things we packed for sneaking aboard?" He answered, "Don't worry, just leave them in the bags and I'll see that your parents get them." Greg remarks, "Seems like a year ago." Ted answers, "Yes. So much has happened in the last 2 days." His friend remarks, "But the trip may be a very long trip. When you're ready, I'll take you down to the breakfast room, where I understand some family members have already arrived." They went in, and their dads were there, along with the rest of the crew and some of their families. Everyone was having coffee, and some were taking advantage of the sweet rolls and donuts. Everyone seemed to be talking at once. Soon their moms came in with 4 sleepy little girls. The girls were seated at a table with a glass of milk and a donut. At 7:30, the guard said, "We must wrap this up by 8, as the crew must get on the spaceship, as the takeoff is at 10. Everyone was up hugging and kissing some more. Then the big door opened, and they all walked out to the runway. And there was more hugging and kissing and goodbyes. There were tears from the moms, and then the girls were crying. Greg and Ted hugged them all again. Then the gate opened, and the crew stood up straight and walked down the runway to the door. They turned and saluted the American flag, waving bravely in the slight breeze. They then turned toward the crowd of reporters and their families and made a brief salute, turned, and disappeared into the spaceship, and the doors closed. The crew then suited up for takeoff. They then went to check everything once and then twice more. There was now 60 minutes left on the countdown. They saw the crowd being ushered outside for their safety. There was nothing for the crew to do now except prepare for liftoff. They checked everything again, then fastened their seatbelts and put on their helmets, attached the air hose to their suits, and waited. They didn't have long until the countdown voice said, "Takeoff." Then, "Takeoff is a go." Then, "Ladies and gentlemen, we have liftoff." After about an hour, everything settled down. Captain Jim said, "Well, gentlemen, we're on our way to see what's behind that black hole. Does anyone have a guess as to what we'll find?" George said, "Oh, I know exactly what we'll find." He waited for someone to ask, but no one said a word. He was quietly waiting. Finally, he said, "Oh, well, we'll find the other side." He laughed at his own joke. Al says, "We don't know if we'll ever get to the other side. I'm glad the new guys didn't bite on your joke." Greg says, "I'd heard that joke before. We'll have to get some new jokes or it's going to be a boring trip." Captain Jim asks, "Who wants to go into cyber sleep first? We need to set up a schedule." Al replies, "Do we really have to do that? Why not for a while just sleep as we need it, as long as it's not our watch?" Captain Jim says, "If everyone agrees, it'll be okay. But if I find anyone sleeping on their watch, then I'll insist that we follow that procedure." Everyone agreed. He said, "I posted the schedule over there. Be sure you study it carefully. I also want each of you to start studying those reports from the scientists. We need to know as much as we can from those reports. I don't mean I want you to spend every minute of your time on them, but as much as you can." Greg speaks up and says, "Captain Jim, Ted and I have studied some of these. They were part of one of our classes about a year ago." "Yes, I forgot about that. Can you enlighten us as to your opinion on any part of them?" Ted says, "I felt they were trying too hard to find an answer and missed some important clues." Greg says, "Yes, we discussed it in class. Some agreed, but some didn't." "Well, can you discuss with us some places or points where you felt that way?" Ted says, "I don't think that would be wise, as now we have the entire report. And things could be different in these." "You have a great point. So, everyone read away and make points to share with the rest of us. Check the schedule, and each one has an evening to fix that meal for the rest. I promise no one will complain about what's being served. Saturday will be a free night, and everyone will fix his own. I'll take Sunday. This will continue until or if we need to start cybersleep." Besides studying the reports and tests of the scientists on the black holes and their regular duties, there was plenty to do. There was all sorts of gym equipment and board games and computer games. They spent a lot of time sitting in groups, telling of their lives and the things they enjoyed. They needed to get to know each other, as it could save their lives. At night, they studied the stars and thought about how different the stars looked from space. They all kept busy, and time was passing faster than they thought possible. One night, Al says, "You guys really need to see this." They all went to the window, except the captain, who was sleeping. What they saw was beautiful and puzzling. It looked like 3 stars were fighting by throwing light balls at each other. Al says, "Just keep watching. There's more." After a few minutes, it appeared that 2 balls hit the same star at the same time and sent the star tumbling into the black hole. Everyone stepped back, but Al said, "Just wait." After a couple of minutes, a 3rd star was there, and the fight started again. Ted asks, "Is that a different star or the same one?" Al says, "I've been watching for some time, and I can't decide. Everything happens so fast." Ted says, "Okay, the next time I'll keep watching the black hole, and the rest will watch the remaining 2 stars." They did this 3 times and still couldn't answer the question. They decided to use 2 people to watch the hole, but all 3 stars disappeared. They thought they all went into the black hole, but weren't sure. They told Captain Jim when he got up. He said, "Let me see the video." They all looked at him, not knowing what to say. Captain Jim asked, "Are you going to tell me that not one of you thought to take a video?" Everyone just stood there, trying to think of an excuse. Then he says, "Well, let's see if one of the ship's cameras caught anything." They watched the footage on all 4 cameras. None had clear footage, but there was some movement on 2 of them. But it appeared to be too far away to make out. He looks at them and says, "If ever anything unusual like that, I want to be awakened. Is that understood?" Nothing like that happened again. Pete had worked a lot with video images and different problems with getting underdeveloped pictures. He had never worked with this sort of camera before, but decided to try his hand at them. He worked with them over the next 2 days, telling the rest not to bother him until he had done all he could do. He finally called everyone together, and they watched the bits of film he was able to produce. Everyone watched them several times before anyone said anything. Then he said, "Let me tell you what I see. Then you can give me your opinion." Captain Jim says, "Let me tell you what I see first. I see 3 stars playing a game that I used to play. They're going in and out of that hole wherever they please. It is sort of like a game of hide and seek. Whoever gets tagged runs into the hole." They all looked at him and said they agreed. He says, "However amusing, it doesn't say solid matter can do the same. As I am sure what we are seeing are only lights, not solid stars." There was no way to confirm his theory. Days and nights went by, but the stars were never seen again, even though they saw lightning in the distance. It was beautiful. Over the next 4 months, except when on duty, Pete kept working with the films he had saved, and he knew he was close but could not figure it out. They were getting close to the black hole, but they knew no more about it than before they had started the trip. One day, the captain asked them to meet him in the control room. When they were all there, he said, "This envelope I hold has an order in it that says we can return home without entering the black hole. Since we have no idea and have not been able to get any more clues as to what awaits on the other side, there'll be no action taken against you, the crew, or me as captain. So, we must decide in the next 24 hours. I don't want an answer now, but this time tomorrow, we must decide." The next morning, they all sat around the little table. All seemed to be in their own thoughts. The captain came and handed each a pen and a slip of paper. He had an extra one for himself in a small box. He said, "Now, we will all write our decision on these pieces of paper. Fold them in half and half again, and I will do the same. Then we will be able to see how we feel about continuing or going home." They all followed his instructions. He shook the box really hard and said, "This way, no one will know what anyone thinks except themselves. Anyone want to make a comment before we check the votes?" No one said anything. He opened the box and pulled out a piece of paper, dropped it on the table and said, "1 vote to continue. Then 2 votes to continue. Then 3 votes to continue. 4 votes, 5 votes, and 6 votes. Well, black hole, here we come. I knew I could count on you all to vote the same way. But how did you know how I would vote?" Pete says, "We didn't know how you'd vote. And just so you understand, we did not get together on our votes. We all feel we should continue." Captain says, "Okay, let's get started. Everyone is at their stations, and let's get this show on the road. We should be 3 days out, but from what I have observed from everything I've seen and read, the closer we get, the stronger the pull, so we may not have that much time. So, everyone pay close attention to any change and notify me of even the slightest change."